folks, how are y'all doing? Welcome to another episode of Chatterbox and another segment of our newest segment, that is Vets Talk Tough. Joining me today is former Navy sailor and Desert Storm vet Anthony Price. Anthony, thank you for your service, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's wonderful to be here. You may refer to me as Token Squid.
Token Squid. I'm not gonna lie, that is a pretty badass nickname.
I'm the Token Squid. Squid, of course, because I'm a sailor.
Mm-hmm.
Squid is a derogatory term for a sailor. I'm the Token Squid because I'm the only Navy guy that goes to the Marine birthday party at that bar over in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I've been there 12 or 13 years in a row. And the Marines that show up there, they say, well, you're the only Navy guy who comes here. You must be our Token Squid.
So
that's where the name came from.
Because it's interesting because the Navy and the Marines very much work hand in hand together. I mean, one of the occupations that I was most interested in, I was medically rejected from the United States Armed Services, despite qualifying for 12 different positions. So instead, I worked in the civilian sector for 3 years of my life. Navy was my top choice. And one of the occupations that interested me was Gator Navy, which I later found out was far more affiliated with the Marine Corps than it was the Navy.
I don't have any experience with the Gator Navy at all. But listen, as far as being rejected, medically rejected from the Navy or from the military, that's okay. That's okay, because if we learned anything, and this all happened in my lifetime, but if we learned anything in Vietnam, and we learned and had it reinforced in Desert Storm, it is that the military, the United States military, can't win without the support of the citizen. If we don't have the citizen support behind us, we can't get anything done. You know, in Vietnam, we get to talk about tough stuff, right? In Vietnam, there is a Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. that has 58,427 names on it, if I'm not mistaken. And I also came to learn over Memorial Day here that there are only 8 names of women on the Vietnam Wall. But there's 58,000 and change up there. If there were, and there's not, but if there were a similar memorial in Vietnam, you know how many names would be on it? More than 6 million.
Damn.
We won every battle in Vietnam. Every battle. We won every single battle. For the 15 years that we were out there, we won every battle. You know what we didn't win? In fact, it's been quoted. Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State at the time, if I'm not mistaken, under Richard Nixon, and he was negotiating the peace talks in Vietnam.
That is correct.
He told his Vietnam counterpart, we won every battle. We killed a lot more of yours than you killed of ours. We won every single battle. And the Vietnam counterpart responded by saying, I guess that doesn't really matter now, does it?
Yes.
Because history books all look at Vietnam as a loss, but we won every battle. The reason that we have to call Vietnam a loss is because the citizens of the United States did not support the war. Now, 15 years later, fast forward 15 years from 1975 to 1991, we are engaged in Operation Desert Storm, or the first Gulf War, and we did have the support of the citizens behind it. George Bush Sr. did a lot of really smart things. George Bush Sr. was quite a mastermind when it came to military tactics. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, or I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but he was a pretty smart cookie when it came to the military. He was a Navy pilot. I think it was a Navy pilot in World War II, and he was actually the chief of the CIA through the 70s. So
that I did not know.
So George Bush Sr. knew some stuff. He was a smart cookie, and he spent 6 months building up the support. Before a shot was fired in Operation Desert Storm, he spent 6 months getting the support, not only of the American citizens, but of every citizen of the world. He put together a coalition that had like 15 or 20 countries. So when it came time for us to invade, what we did was pushed Iraq out of Kuwait in the first Gulf War. By the time it came, I mean, he even gave him a deadline. He went out and publicly told the whole wide world, get out by Monday night or Tuesday morning, we're going to push you out. And that's exactly what happened. They didn't get out. We went in, we pushed them out. And it didn't take very long. It didn't take very long at all. And there's another story I can tell you. I don't even know where this interview is going at this point, but I'm the executive director of the Gold Star Ride Foundation. Gold Star Ride Foundation takes care of immediate family members of people killed in the military. So that's where I get to come and go. And the reason I get to tell these fun stories is when George Bush Sr. Stopped the fight in Iraq, he had a plan to go get Saddam Hussein out of power. There was a plan in place. But what happened was he lost the election. There was an election in 1992, and he lost to Bill Clinton. That's a whole different story altogether. But because he was a lame duck, that's what we call him, right? He's a lame duck. He's in there from November until January, knowing that he's leaving in January. He didn't have any more motivation to go get Saddam Hussein out because he wasn't going to be president anymore. But the story is, I went to in a small town in Wisconsin. I went to see a Gold Star dad, and this Gold Star dad tells me the story of how his son was an Army Ranger. He was the star of the football team in the late 80s, and in 1990 he'd signed up, joined the Army, and then he joined the Army Rangers, and he was such a stellar trainee. And I'm kind of making these words up as I go because I'm not sure exactly what the right word should be. But he was such a stellar trainee that there's now a building in the training grounds at Fort Benning, Georgia, that bears his name. So what happened to the son? Well, the son was in a training mission with 3 teams of Army Rangers just north of Salt Lake City on Salt Lake, the big Salt Lake that's up there. They're up there training, and if you know anything about how how Black Ops works, you know, we took out Osama bin Laden. In order to take out Osama bin Laden, we figured out where he was, and we knew where he was for 9 months. But that 9 months was spent building a perfect replica of that compound and having the SEAL teams train in it over and over and over and over and over again for 8 months. And then when they went to do the real one, they had it down so pat. They knew exactly where they were by how many steps they took. They didn't have to see their surroundings. They knew everything before they went in and got him. They went in, they got him, and they got him out, and that was it. And even with all that training, the SEAL teams that took out Osama bin Laden ran into a little bit of a snag. I don't know if it was a poor weather report or one wall was 10 feet tall when it should have been 9 feet tall or something like that. But one of the helicopters was left behind. All the men came out, but there was a helicopter left behind because it ran into some trouble, hit a tree, something. Anyway, this is a story about George Bush Sr. and the Army Rangers that were training. 3 teams of Army Rangers are training to take out Saddam Hussein from Iraq. And they're going through the training. They've got the replicas built perfectly. They're going through it. And Colin Powell was the Secretary of Defense at the time, and he called up that Navy or that training base, and he said, "I want to come and watch. You guys are going to go through the motions, and I'm going to watch how it goes." And that this guy from Wisconsin, he tells us that his son called him the day before, called him on the phone, and there's no cell phones back then. There was no internet, no email, none of that stuff. So he calls him on the phone on the landline, and he said, "Dad, I'm just a little bit worried because Colin Powell is going to come and watch us do a run through of this operation, and we're not ready. The communications aren't right. This isn't right. That isn't right. We're just not ready for this, but we have to do it in front of Colin Powell because the Secretary of Defense is coming. You know, we got to put on our A game, and we got to go through it in front of Colin Powell." The next day, 3 helicopters crashed, and we lost 27 Army Rangers in Salt Lake.
Wow. Holy crap.
And that's how the guy in Wisconsin became a Gold Star dad. So he told us that whole story when we went to visit him. His is a very, very remarkable story. I'm extraordinarily fortunate because I've chosen to spend my time helping the Gold Star families get through a day. So, as a rule, I meet them. I'm with them for anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, and we're just hanging out. And for that day, I'm there to help them remember their fallen hero. And I've been very, very fortunate because, first of all, this is a job I get to do. Now, granted, it comes with an intense amount of sadness because I've now visited with 560 of these Gold Star families in the last 7.5 years. That's the equivalent of going to 560 funerals. Additionally, in the last 7.5 years, I lost my younger brother, so I went to his funeral. I lost my older sister, so I went to her funeral, and I lost my father, so I went to his funeral.
My
And
apologies
there's,
for the loss.
and I'm at that age now. We joke about it. I'm at that age now where funerals is the only social life we have.
Okay. For me, funerals have been more like the only family reunion we have. I've been going to funerals and wakes since I was 8 years old. There's no such thing as going to a wedding in my family. Whenever we go and like we see each other, somebody has to be in a casket, an urn, or we've even been in a situation where we didn't even have a body to bury. I have been to, I'd have to say, in regards to that experience, probably when my great uncle, who was very much like a grandfather to me, he was a Korean War vet. So we had a military funeral. That was probably the most painful, like internally, that I ever had to go to. I was standing right next to the soldiers when they did the 21 gun salute. And every time I heard that bullet fire, it felt like it slammed me in the hat.
I know what that's like because I've got quite a collection of these. This came from one of those 21 gun salutes that you're talking about.
Mm.
If you look at this shelf behind me over here, gets kind of hard to see it with this camera and that, but there's 2 more of them on that shelf right there at the tip of my finger. There's 2 more of these. These are usually reserved for family members.
Mm.
Only the family gets these things. When they pick them up off the ground, they will give them to the family members.
Oh.
But in each case, well, first of all, in the most important, one of my best friends served in the Korean War.
Mm.
And when we went to his funeral, he was buried at Fort Snelling, the military cemetery here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, which is a phenomenal place. All of these the national cemeteries are pretty phenomenal places. But I went up to the American Legion guys there and I said, look, he and I were best friends for the last 25 years. I would really like to have one of those shells. And he said, well, we'll see. We'll see if there's anybody in the family that doesn't want one. And if there's somebody in the family that doesn't want one, we'll give one to you. And I was there on my motorcycle. I go everywhere on my motorcycle. It doesn't even matter what time of year it was. If I'm not mistaken, he was buried in, I think there were little patches of snow on the ground when I showed up on the motorcycle for his funeral.
Mm.
And anyway, I was getting on the motorcycle to leave, and the funeral director came over to me and he said, "Here, I pocketed this one for you."
That was very generous of him.
And he gave it to me. Well, the family all knew me too, but the family they were not going to be generous. Let me just put it that way. But that's where this one came from. So his name was Bob. Bob was a Korean War veteran, and he was a very, very dear friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I sent a text message to his daughter earlier today, reminding her that I missed her dad every day. So yeah, that's the 21 gun salute is a powerful thing.
Yes. Yes.
And I imagine at my funeral, somebody's going to say, "Wow, I wasn't expecting that."
I'd have to say I was kind of very much, it was the first time I'd ever been to a military funeral because I come from a thorough background of service members. Somebody in my family has served in every branch of the armed forces except for the Coast Guard, which is actually, that's what I qualified for 12 different positions in. But I intended to spiff and transition to the Navy because Navy was my number one choice. Yeah.
If I had it all to do over again, I'd probably go Coast Guard.
Really?
Well, learning what I know. My first choice would be Navy SEAL. I would be I would do everything in my power to be a Navy SEAL for a couple of reasons. Number one, they have the greatest training, and the greatest training allows them to be successful in whatever they do. Yesterday, um, earlier this week was Memorial Day,
Yep, of
2026,
course.
and I had to make a speech at one of the parks over yonder. There was about 350 or 400 people there, but the guy hosting it, his brother was a Navy SEAL that was killed when a helicopter he was riding in was shot down. Which is pretty much the only way you can kill a Navy SEAL. You got to shoot him in the air because you're not going to kill him on the ground.
No.
Um, just, I mean,
Marcus
I could be.
Luttrell, Marcus Luttrell, for those of you who do not know, Marcus Luttrell is the lone survivor of Operation Red Wings, which was a very strategic combat operation during the Afghan war to take out a high target Taliban warlord. He described, he's like, Navy SEALs, we're made to not be broken. The only way to break us is to kill us.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, you shoot him in the arm, that ain't going to stop him. You shoot him in the leg, that's not going to stop him. You stab him, that's not going to stop him.
No.
There's only one stopping. It's not just the Navy SEALs. There's a lot of branches that have special forces that have similar motivation. But the SEALs they really are kind of the cream of the crop. And speaking of that, when I was in the Navy for 2 years before I knew that the United States had a SEAL team.
Really?
Yeah, and the way I found out that the Navy had a SEAL team was the SEAL teams came into my office. I was a weather forecaster, so my job was to give the pilots a weather briefing. So the pilot had to come into my office. I give them the weather briefing, and then I write it all up, and off they go. Again, I'm in the military before computers, before cell phones, before all of the technology that we're using today. Anyway, this pilot comes in. He's flying a C-130, and I said, "I got bad news for you." He said, "What's up?" I said, "You're grounded for the next 3 hours. You're not going anywhere. You're grounded for the next 3 hours." And
That
he
must
didn't
have
want to
crushed
hear
his
that.
spirit.
He didn't want to hear that, especially from a lowly enlisted guy like me.
Oof. Yeah.
Enlisted guys aren't supposed to tell officers what to do, but I told this guy what to do. So, nope, you don't get to fly anywhere. He says, "Well, what am I going to do with my guys for 3 hours?" And I said, "Look, we have a flight planning room. It's like a conference room. It's got a table that seats 10 people." I said, "Just have them sit down. I'll get them a pop or water or something, and we'll get them some snacks. You guys could just sit around, hang out there for a little while." So these guys all come marching in, and they're all sitting around this table, and I'm fixing them up with a couple of bottles of water and a couple of Snickers candy bars or whatever it was. And they tell me how they were the second team. They were the second group of military arrivals on Grenada. What do you remember about Grenada?
Grenada was pretty ugly.
Um,
And there's a lot of this is why I know about Grenada.
Yeah.
Grenada was, how do I put it? There's definitely a lot of mixed judgment and scrutiny surrounding it. Oh, was it necessary? Oh, was it unnecessary? Many would say it's part of the battle against communism that was going on back in the Reagan years. Also, he had to deal with listening to a bit of bitching from his girlfriend, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, as many people know her. Do you know what Reagan's first words were when he first met Thatcher?
No idea.
Whoa, what a woman. Maybe he should have married her instead of Nancy.
Considering the source, the way I remember Grenada, again, it was one of those things I lived through. It lasted for a weekend. It was in this, I don't know, somewhere near South America. And what had happened was some guerrillas decided they wanted to take over the country, and they actually took American students hostage. So we had to rescue our American people. It also had the distinction of happening like a month or two after the Beirut bombing. Beirut bombing was another significant thing. That was a peacekeeping force in Beirut. And somebody came in with a truckload of explosives and exploded it and killed 253 U.S. servicemen, mostly Marines. I think the 247 of them were Marines in Beirut.
Yes, they all were actually. There's a memorial dedicated to it here in Boston. I've walked past it about 1,000 times.
There's another one in down the road from you in Providence, and I've been to that one. I have not been to the one in Boston, but I have been in one in Beirut, or excuse me, in Providence. But we were talking about Grenada. So these guys, I'm working, right? These guys are in there and they're telling me stories of what it was like to be the second SEAL team in Grenada. The first team actually all got killed. All of them got killed. Yeah. So they were the second SEAL team on the island. Even with that, the whole thing was over in 2 days, I think, maybe 3.
I believe it was 3 days that Grenada ended. It lasted 3 days, and then it's like, you clean your hands, okay.
So, talk about enhanced interrogation techniques. I don't know if I should tell this story or not, but I should be able to because it's 43 years old, more or less. But so they said they captured a couple of the bad guys.
Yep.
And they were interrogating them.
Yep.
And as part of their interrogation, the bad guys were stripped naked and tied to a chair. And there are 2 of them sitting next to each other, naked, sitting in a chair. And the interrogators, which were the SEAL team, they said, all right, we're going to ask you this question one more time. You're going to tell us the answer? Okay, there's no answer. So they take one chair and they drag it out of the room. And just before they close the door, they pull the pin on a grenade and drop it in the other guy's lap. And they all leave the room and close the door. Kaboom! And then they turned to the other guy and said, you want to tell us now? And he did. Told them everything they needed to know.
Wow. I mean, today that would be considered a war crime, but it was a totally different era.
Yeah, it was totally different era. And they achieved what they were after. They got it done. And that was my introduction to the notion that SEAL teams exist.
Really? That's interesting.
Before that, I did not know that the United States had a SEAL team in the Navy. I did not know. I came from a small town in southern Minnesota. That's where I grew up, small town, southern Minnesota. I barely knew what the military was. You know, I had a couple of older brothers that had friends that were actually drafted into Vietnam. And I remember them coming back from Vietnam and playing pickup basketball with them and, you know, different things that you do when you're a teenager. And I remember how frightened I was to be in their presence.
Really?
Yes, because what Vietnam did to these guys, the post-traumatic stress that came back from Vietnam was unspeakably wicked. Unspeakably wicked. Can I tell you another horrible story?
Yeah, of course, sure.
We're supposed to be talking about Gold Star families. I got a buddy. I have a lot of friends, lots and lots and lots of friends.
Yep.
This one particular friend served in Vietnam toward the end of the war, we'll say 69, 70. And he was a little guy, stands about 5'4". And he's also got a black belt in karate. And his job he was an Army Ranger. He was a field promoted Army Ranger, which is, I think there's only like 10 of them in the whole wide world.
Yeah, that's a rarity. You don't hear about
extreme.
that.
It doesn't even happen anymore, but it happened. It was a rare thing, but it happened occasionally during Vietnam. Mm-hmm. But his job was to find the enemy camp and sneak up to it at night when everybody's sleeping and sneak into the outermost tent without waking anybody up and kill the 2 people that were in it by slicing them stem to stern. And then sneak back out. And this is what he did, maybe twice a week for 6 months.
That had to be.
Yeah, what's that going to do to your mind?
That's going to. I have PTSD myself, and I. How do I put it? It is something that sticks with you every single day till the moment you are 6 feet under. It messes with your mind. It plays with you, and it's just there.
You don't know when it's coming.
No,
I mean you can get some good ideas. You know what kind of things to try to avoid, but you never know. You know, it might happen. It might be you're at the grocery store and somebody in the next aisle over, the pickles slip out of their hand and it smashes onto the floor, and that's your trigger. You don't know. You don't know. Anyway, the good news is I don't know exactly how. Maybe it's because he's got a triple degree black belt now.
Hmm.
And I think he's got it in 3 disciplines. But he's 75 years old now, and he's one of the greatest human beings I've ever met. And if he would not have told me that that was his job, I was there. There's no way you're going to get me to believe that it is somebody's job, but it was. It was his job. So there's all kinds of craziness that military gets to bring to the table.
Yeah.
All sorts of it. Yeah. So we mentioned the Beirut thing, and I did not see the memorial in Boston, but I did see the memorial in Providence, Rhode Island, which was
Okay.
they call it the Rhode Island Nine. There were 10 Marines from Rhode Island
Mm.
in the Beirut barracks,
Yes.
and one of them survived. He's currently, I think, he's either a congressman from Rhode Island or he is a retired congressman from Rhode Island. But
Impressive.
he did the work for 30 years to get the memorial built there. It took him 30 years to get it done, and it's a marvelous piece of work. And I went to meet with the families, the Rhode Island Nine families. That's who I went to meet them, and they all said, "Yeah, you come and meet us. We'll meet you at the memorial." So that's what I was doing there. That's how I ended up there. But I've been to all. Can we talk about Gold Star families now?
Yes. Let us talk
Yeah, I've
about
been to
Gold
all of
Star
them, and
family.
you mentioned PTSD,
Yes.
and for me, let me just say this right now: there's no D. In my opinion, there
Hmm.
is nothing disorderly about it. If you go through something that the human condition is not designed to go through, it's going to mess with you. And if it doesn't mess with you, there was something wrong before you started. I often say this to people: yeah, you're going to get 2 guys to go over to a war zone where people are shooting at them every day, and then somebody gets his head blown off right next to him, and that guy comes back and there's nothing wrong with him. Well, there was something wrong with him before he left. Yeah, we got to watch out for that guy extra a lot because there was definitely something wrong with him before he left. So in my opinion, there's no disorder. I refuse. It's post traumatic stress. Period. There's nothing disorderly about it. It's normal.
I agree. I think the D might need to be
Yeah, it needs to be
removed.
rectified. Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. It is just post traumatic stress. It's not a disorder. It's just something that plagued our mind that we cannot get rid of. It's that in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah. And if you allow me to try to make some humor here out of this whole thing, we humans for the 20th century have tried to make things more complicated by adding more syllables.
Mm.
So in World War I, guys came home with it. They called it shell shock.
Yep.
And then they called it, I don't know, something else and something else. And it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's post traumatic stress disorder. It's always the same thing. But I'm going to suggest that now that we're in the 21st century, let's start working backwards. Let's just knock off 3 syllables at the end of that. Let's go post traumatic stress. Okay, not all of my jokes are good, which is why I'm not a stand up comic.
And sometimes that's a good thing, to be honest. I mean, stand-up comedians tend to get a bit of scrutiny, especially depending on what kind of material they put out there. But
Well, it is a necessary career, and I'm glad somebody's doing it. There are a lot of days when people have had conversations with me about why I'm not doing it, and it's well, I kind of think the work that I'm doing is more important.
I agree.
And incidentally, I have to be a smartass. And if that hasn't presented itself so far in this conversation, let me go out there right now and just put it out there. I'm a smartass. And the reason I'm a smartass, I have to be a smartass, is because I'm dealing with families that dealt with death all the time. I think the average is something like well, let's see, how many weeks are there in 7 years? 7 times 52, 350 weeks. I've met with 560 families. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 a week.
That's a
Constant.
lot.
That's a lot. That's without a break, 2 a week. Actually, what it's like is like 10 this week and none for the next 2 weeks, and then, but yeah. So the average is 2 a week of families that I'm dealing with, and that's an intense amount of sadness and grief that I have
Mm.
to figure out a way to deal with. Now, one of the ways I deal with that is I get on the motorcycle and I take off and down the road I go. And wind therapy, for those of you guys don't ride motorcycles,
Or motor scooters, which is what I ride.
that's a good
Not the same
start.
thrill. Not the
That's
same
it.
thrill.
It's a little bit different when you're hitting. I got a scooter too. I bought one for my wife last year for her birthday. She rode it 6 inches and said, I'm never going to ride that thing again. So it just sits in the garage collecting dust. But every now and then I say, you know what? I'm going to ride that today. And it's a pretty decent scooter. It's got a top speed of 60 miles an hour. So
I need to get a new one because mine got they weren't able to fix it at the repair shop, but because the part that they needed was completely out of stock and they had no clue as to when they would get it back. So I'm currently saving up some dough so I can get a new one that goes
Amazon
over
and eBay got
50 miles.
everything you need, man. Amazon and eBay got everything you need. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
find it.
definitely. The one
Anyway,
I
if you
found,
want to buy mine, hey, I'll give you a heck of a deal on it. It's only got 100 miles on it. Anyway, I have to be a smart aleck because that's one of the ways that we deal with the grief. It's kind of a yin and yang kind of a thing. You got
makes
this,
sense.
you got to have this.
Yeah.
And I often have conversations with my special lady. That's what I would refer to her as MSL. I don't know if all of your listeners get to see the video, but see, here's a book. It's got my name on it. That's because I wrote it after visiting 64 Gold Star families. And I refer to her as MSL whenever she comes up in the book. MSL, my special lady. But I often have conversations with her about I get to experience these extremes, these extraordinary extremes of sadness,
Yes.
of just life. I get to experience these extraordinary extremes of life at this end, but we're talking about sadness and grief at this end, which means I get joy and happiness at this end to the same level. And that attitude carries me through a lot of stuff. It really does. It's a good idea for everybody to understand that everybody gets ups, everybody gets downs, and you just kind of gotta remember that as deep as you get to go when you're in the downs, you get to go that much higher when you're in the ups.
Yeah, I worked in the civilian sector for 3 years, and most of the guys I'd worked with, they did time over in Iraq, over in Afghanistan, and what was it? One day, my chief, he was telling me a story about what he had to endure in attempts to save a friend of his when he was a corpsman overseas, and of course, it caused me a bit of PTSD because he was talking about a severe head brain injury. And I myself, I've had 3 brain surgeries, believe it or not, folks. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that explains why you wear a hat. I knew eventually I'd get a good joke in there.
No, I wear it because it makes me look sexy.
No comment.
Yeah. No, and that caused some PTSD. Well, when he was kind of giving me all the intense details and stuff. Next day, we sat down and we talked a little bit about it. And I discovered something from actually having that moment of PTSD. A proper therapist or psych won't ever be able to provide the level of healing and therapy needed for somebody who has been to war and back because
Unless they have
cannot.
been to war and back.
Correct, exactly. Unless they have, because there is what I refer to as the common ground, that moment where you can find the mesh and stuff like that. And I used that, the common ground, to give him a moment of like some therapeutic healing and stuff, it actually felt really great being able to do that, being able to use my own trauma to help heal some of his trauma and really lift his spirits because he'd seen a lot. He'd been through a lot. He told me I've had friends who had died in my arms. I had to go to 4 funerals this 1 month. And it's something that I can't emphasize enough. Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men. He was 100% right. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, I think he was talking about something slightly different, but your point is well made.
Yes.
Yeah, your point is well made. The post-traumatic stress is a very complicated
Mhm.
and necessary part of the deal. And podcasts like this and new radio programs and the news media, the stuff that they're doing on television, got to watch out for that because that's all messed up. But we can find the truth with the little guys that only have one or two listeners and stuff like that. So but yeah, we got to watch out for the television media because they're lying to sell more toothpaste.
Very true. I refer to the media as the propaganda machine.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's the pure definition of American media, especially now. Like if you turn back the clock to like the era of like Barbara Walters, Walter Cronkite, Mike Wallace, and stuff like that, that was real journalism. That was real news. What we have to deal with today is a constant force-fed propaganda machine.
Yeah, they were borderline with some of this stuff. Walter Cronkite in particular, because he was on the air every night, 5 nights a week.
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
But my earliest memories of reports of the war
Mhm.
were from Walter Cronkite.
Yep.
And he was doing, he was doing what he thought was the necessary thing to do. This is the report. This is what we know what happened. This is what happened today in Vietnam. Well, the downside to that was unexpected. When he said 348 were killed in this part of Vietnam today, what he thought he was doing was telling the people that many people died in Vietnam today. What he was actually doing was telling people to dislike the war. We lost more. We lost more. We lost more. We only lost 58,000 in Vietnam. You know how many we lost in World War II? You know how many we lost in World War I? You know how many we lost in the Civil War? Civil War had
men
more losses
died at Gettysburg alone. That's something people don't know. 50,000 died at Gettysburg alone, and I've been
in 3 days. In 3 days.
3 days, yeah. And I've been to Gettysburg.
July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 1863. Yeah, we lost 50,000 in 3 days. We lost almost 700,000 total just in the Civil War. We have not lost that many in all other wars combined. So again, I said this before, and I'll say it again. The U.S. military cannot be successful without the support of the civilians. And I don't think I've ever said this before, but it's true. The truth of the matter is that the military is doing a job for the civilians. And if the civilians don't like the job that the military is doing, well, they're not going to be successful. It's just not going to work. So that's the biggest thing that we get to take away, and the biggest thing that we get to promote with the honest things that come out of podcasts like this is to tell people, you know what? Trump said it when he just started his war in Iran, and I don't want to turn this into anything political at all. However, after like day 2 of the war in Iran, he said, yeah, we're at war. People are going to die, or words to that effect.
I remember that.
Immediately, everybody turned on him and said, how dare you say such a thing? But the truth of the matter is, it's a war.
Mm-hmm.
And war is a big, ugly, nasty word. Yes. It's also necessary at times. There are people who are willing to say, just like we were talking about Navy SEALs earlier, well, we're really glad that they're on our side. But
yes.
But the other side that's working against us, they have their people who are willing to not stop until they're dead also.
Just look at Japan during World War II.
Exactly. Perfect example. Granted,
they were
75 years ago or 80 years ago, but still, same thing. Their reason for what they're doing is worth more than their own life.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, this is what we have to deal with when it comes to being at war. We don't get to be at war and say, you know what, we're going to blow up one of your airplanes if you don't do it our way, and then we're going to walk away. It ain't going to be like that. We have to find the best way to neutralize the threat.
And another thing that people really need to understand about war is they need to learn what Murphy's Law is. Expect the unexpected. What will go wrong can go wrong. You can put together the most thorough game plan, well, war plan in the book, detail after detail, ripple effect after ripple effect. But when it all plays out in front of your face, probably 0.5%, 0.5 of what was fabricated into that plan will be carried out. The rest,
Yeah, and
shit.
as I demonstrated with the 2 stories I told before, the
Mhm.
3 teams of Army Rangers that all died in Salt Lake City, and the when we finally got Osama bin Laden,
Yes.
even that one did not go without, "Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen."
Correct. Yeah.
And they trained for that for 8 months or something similar to that. I know they trained for a very, very long time, and when they're doing their training, that's all they're doing. They eat, sleep, and go through the mission again. Eat, sleep, and go through the mission again. Um, I don't think
I
Elton John
designed war
practiced the
plans for
piano
the
that much.
US Navy, so I can tell you firsthand, having gone through the routine of doing the digging, doing the information, soaking in everything that I could acquire so that things could be achieved, so that there could be a level of success, maybe not full success, but a level of success. And then when I saw it unfold before my eyes, it, how do I put it per se? When you're there in the office, going through the motions, doing your job and everything like that, you actually feel an immense sense of pride within oneself. You're like, holy crap, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to achieve so much. I'm going to save 1,000 something lives. But when push comes to shove and it actually happens, you will fully understand why Oppenheimer said what he said right after we bombed the shit out of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. That was the only thing that was ringing in my brain. Because, one, everything that I had written out and kind of detailed for them, like, I'd have to only maybe, yeah, 0.5% of what I handed over to the United States Navy was carried out. The rest was completely ignored and flushed down the toilet.
Well, that happens a lot too.
Yeah. I think they were only looking for the stuff that appealed to them rather than looking at the more in-depth stuff, which is whenever I would design plans, I focused on a balancing act of tactical, humanitarian, and diplomacy. Because my goal at the end of the day was this: I want people to live. For me, it was this: take out the target, let the civilian populace live. Do not make them suffer. But at the end of the day, when it comes to war, truly it is the civilian populace of said nation that's going to suffer the most.
Probably. Well, at the end of the day, a war is simply 2 governments that don't get along,
Yeah,
and
true.
everything trickles down from there down to the families of the people involved, which incidentally is a good way for us to segue back. We talked a little bit about post-traumatic stress.
Of course, yeah.
Post-traumatic stress is not something that you experience as a group. Post-traumatic
No.
stress is something that you experience on a very, very individual basis. Um, and to that end, part of the right alongside that, the parallel to that is the families that go alongside it. So post-traumatic stress can leave a big mark on the brothers and sisters, moms and dads, and sons and daughters of the people who are suffering from it,
Oh, yes.
or people who are, I don't know if we'll say suffering just because I can't think of a better word right now. But further still, I got the privilege of meeting somebody in Michigan just a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I meet this woman in Michigan whose husband was killed, and the official cause of death was post traumatic stress disorder. So what does that mean? That means it was self inflicted. That's what that means. But and that's one of the things that we get to, as a society, we get to move forward and we get to work harder to take care of the people with post traumatic stress so that so we can reduce that number.
Mm.
Okay. Because we really do want to reduce that number of deaths from post traumatic stress. And a
Yes.
couple of stories I can tell you about, but the whole thing is it's down to the individual, it's down to the family.
Yes.
Post-traumatic stress is an individual thing. The effects of it, you get to share with the family. But when we're talking about war, we're talking about there are people whose lives come to an end.
Hmm.
And if
Yes.
that's your family, that's the only thing that matters.
Hmm.
You don't care about the war anymore. You
No,
care
no,
that you
no.
lost somebody from your family. You've got one chair that's sitting empty at Thanksgiving dinner. You've got one chair that's sitting empty at on Easter or Christmas or 4th of July. Name your favorite holiday.
You
You've
got
got to
one
deal
less
with it.
present to put underneath the tree on Christmas. How does that feel?
Exactly. And that never, ever goes away. I'll give you a case in point. I talked about this recently. About 3 years ago, I met a brother and a sister in Colorado. They had lost their I met them 3 years ago, right? So that's 2003. They lost their brother in 1968, which is I'm sorry, I
Vietnam.
said 2003. I meant 2023. Uh, uh, so they lost their brother something, whatever that is, 55 years later or 55
Mhm.
years
Yep.
before I got there, more or less. I'm not very good at math. If I was, I'd be an actuarian, and you and I wouldn't be talking.
Yeah,
Uh,
I sucked at math too. I hate it. I
so
think it's
we'll
only good.
use round numbers. So 50 years before I meet them,
Hmm.
if they lose their older brother in Vietnam, and within 30 seconds of our meeting, we met at a restaurant. Within 30 seconds of the meeting, the reaction that I got from these two people, this brother and sister, was as if I was the one that told them that their brother had been killed. It was still that raw, that fresh, and that immediate to them. They had been carrying it around for 55 years, but to them, it was fresh and new and yeah, so we had a great visit. It lasted a couple hours, but this is the kind of stuff that I get to deal with every time I go meet a Gold Star family. For me, the military operations it's a very limited scope. The only thing I'm concerned about is what was the effect of this family? What was the effect of this widow? Or what was the effect of that child? I got to meet a guy in Ohio who was 1.5 years old when his aunt died. His aunt was killed in Vietnam. He's now the closest living relative to her, and he was only a year and a half old when she died. And it was a she. It was his aunt, of course. But he's dedicated his life. Now he's 60, 59, 60 years old, and he's dedicated his life to her memory. He's got
That's
all
sick.
kind. But he never knew her. But that's how important it is. First question out of his mouth: what would she have been like if she would have lived? What would my life be like if that aunt would have lived? What would it, so this is the kind of stuff that we take away from it. And it's very important. I believe that it's very important that we all know what a Gold Star family is. Immediate
Yes.
family members of somebody who's killed in the military. Incidentally, I get to show off a little bit.
That is a heck of a collection. I like that.
No, it's just the
Stylish.
big one. I just want you to see the big one.
I saw it.
The big one says Gold
Gold
Star
Star.
Ride Foundation on it.
Hmm.
Anyway, we not everybody knows what a Gold Star family is. I was tooling out in your neck of the woods. I crisscrossed Pennsylvania on US Highway 6,
Hmm.
which I don't know if you've ever been on it. It's from my perspective, which is the whole country, it's not very far away from you, but it's probably
I've probably been there because I have family that live in northern Pennsylvania, close to Scranton, where the best paper company on earth existed, Dunder Mifflin. So
yeah.
I've probably traveled there. It's about a
Yeah, US Highway 6 is an east-west road. It's a US highway. It's mostly 2 lanes. It's through the Allegheny Mountains. The longest stretch of straight road on this highway is a half a mile. So if you're on a motorcycle and the sun is shining, this is exactly where you want to be. Every curves, hills, winds, it's just beautiful. So I get off to the western end of Pennsylvania, and I have to go see a family in Lockport, New York, which is just
Mm,
outside of Buffalo.
okay.
So I took that route because Pennsylvania doesn't make me wear a helmet. New York does. So I get over to the west coast, or west edge of New York and Pennsylvania, and I have to stop and put my helmet on. I stop in this McDonald's parking lot that's right on the state line, put the helmet on, hit the start button, motorcycle starts up, rolls 10 miles or 10 feet across the parking lot, and it dies. It's like, what the hell? And I'm doing everything I can to try to figure out why. I'm looking at the computer, I'm getting the readings, I'm looking up the codes on the internet to figure out what's wrong with my motorcycle, and I can't figure it out. It's very frustrating. There might have been a few curse words coming out of my mouth, when all of a sudden I hear this voice from behind me that says, "Hey, that happens to mine sometimes too. Let's push you over here in the shade and see if we can figure it out." So my motorcycle's got, you saw the Gold Star Ride patch back there. So I got that on my back, and I think I had 13 Gold Star Ride Foundation stickers plastered all over the motorcycle. Anyway, so he's on one side of the bike, I'm on the other, and we're pushing it back, and he says, "Oh, what's all this Gold Star Ride stuff?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I ride around the country to honor and support Gold Star families, and this is part of the work I do." And he says, "Oh, that sounds pretty interesting. What's a Gold Star family?" So I tell him it's, immediate family members, somebody killed in the military. And he stopped pushing the motorcycle. He stood upright and he looked me dead in the face. And he said, "My daughter was killed in Korea 3 years ago." And I said, "That makes you a Gold Star dad." And he said, "Never heard that before." I said, "Yeah, you're a Gold Star dad. That's the way that works." We pushed it about 3 more feet, got into the shade, and we spent the next half hour talking about him being a Gold Star dad. We
Mm,
have plaques, of which I don't have any that I can show you, but we have plaques that we give to the family that have a letter
mm,
engraved in them. The letter was written by Abraham Lincoln. It's lovingly referred to as the Bixby letter.
mhm.
Has words like, "I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming,"
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. So I gave him one of those, and I made sure that he knew that if he ever needs anything, he can reach out to us, and we'll make sure that he's taken care of. Anyway, after about 20, 30 minutes, he says, "You know what? I got grandkids waiting for me. So we got to get this motorcycle figured out." I strapped on the helmet. I hit the key. I hit the button, started right up. I turned around, waved, I said, "See you later." And down the road I went, and I rode 3.5 hours to Lockport, New York without a hitch. Why did the motorcycle stop? But nobody knows what a Gold Star family is either. I mean, these are important parts of the puzzle. Um, and there are 560 stories coast to coast.
So
Um,
of all the like, I'm sure these are a collection of people like from every conflict. Is there like a certain
yeah.
majority per se? Like maybe more Vietnam or more Afghanistan, Iraq, more Korea, or what would you say is the
Well,
percentage
Korea,
of
the thing about Korea is that it was long ago, and the gold stars from Korea are starting to get pretty old. So there's fewer of them. There have been a great number of Vietnam,
Mm,
but then we get everything mixed in with it too. So we've got a great deal from Beirut. Wasn't a war. Beirut was just a single bombing. But I've met a great deal of people who are Gold Star families because of Beirut. Uh, there are a handful of people that we've met that lost because their loved one lost their life during uh, conflicts that were created by Clinton. Black Hawk Down, for example. I think I met one of
yep.
those families.
Cal
I met
Mogadishu.
and I met the Black Hawk Down was a movie I had a hard time with because that was my time in service. So
Mm,
I
yeah.
really kind of struggled with that movie.
Yes.
But I got to meet, uh, oh, who was the football player who left?
Cardinals. Yeah.
Yeah, he walked off the football field, said no to like $7 million a year, and put on a uniform and became an Army Ranger and lost his life. I'm supposed to know his name. There's an American Legion in Phoenix, Arizona that bears his name. Pat
Mm.
Tillman. That's it.
Pat
Pat
Tillman.
Tillman.
Yes.
So I got to have his mother is one of the gold stars that I met.
Yes.
She is rightfully so still pretty upset
Mm.
because I don't know if you knew this or not, but Pat Tillman not only left a football career to be an Army Ranger, he died by friendly fire. So
That's brutality. That's brutal.
actually, and not only did he walk off the football field, but before he before he went to be an Army Ranger, he grabbed his brother's arm and said, "Come on, this is what we're doing." And him and his brother were both Army Rangers, and he lost his life over there. His brother's a little upset too. I haven't met him, but I did meet their mom, and I talked to her for quite a while. And I've also given speeches at the Pat Tillman American Legion in Phoenix, Arizona.
This would be one of those moments where I give a monologue, by the way.
This is?
Yes, yeah, because you're
It's time for
mentioning
your monologue?
Yes, you're mentioning Black Hawk Down, Mogadishu.
Uh-huh.
So, for those of you who have been living under a rock for the past 30 years, or never don't even bother to pick up a history book, Gen Zs, Black Hawk Down, also referred to as the Battle of Mogadishu, was originally a humanitarian military mission known as Operation Restore Hope, launched by one of the last great American presidents, George Bush Sr. The objective at the time was that Somalia, Mogadishu is one of the biggest cities in all of Somalia, was in a very brutal and ugly, and I mean ugly, civil war. There was basically an absolute power vacuum, no stable government under any circumstances. People were starving day by day. Underneath the hardship of an individual known as Mohammed Farah Aidid, who was an African warlord, later found out to be a strong ally of Osama bin Laden. When things, unfortunately, this humanitarian mission went south when a small group of U.S. armed forces were killed, and it transitioned into what is referred to as Operation Gothic Serpent, where it was all about taking out Aidid. So, this mission was supposed to last 3 weeks. 6 weeks later, no real leads, only a few short hints as to what's going on, and Clinton was breathing fire down the neck of General Garrison, who was the head of all the Army Rangers and military combat forces in Mogadishu, Somalia. General Garrison gets that good lead, that one lead as to somebody who could bring them to Aidid. So we rounded up all the boys, all of the Rangers were mobilized. They were to go out and find this lead who would then take them to Aidid. We sent in a Black Hawk. That Black Hawk got shot right in the tail by an RPG, members of Aidid's militia, who were very actually well aware and well prepared for us going out whenever we did during these operations.
Yeah, they knew we were coming that day.
Yes, yeah. It was believed that we could still save the guys in that helicopter, as well as fulfill the mission of finding Aidid. Sent out another chopper. That one got smacked in the tail and had to do a forced crashed landing, as well the other one had landed completely on its side. Blades had spun out of control. In that split moment, it transitioned from, okay, this is no longer a search and capture mission. This is a full-on rescue mission. Lasted 18 hours, is considered it was ranked as the most intense firefight the United States had been in since the Vietnam War. It is ranked by most historians as the third most intense firefight in U.S. military history, although I'm sure with what a lot has gone on over the past 20-odd years, that number and statistic is debated. Eventually, we ended up in that span. It lasted 18 hours. 18 men died during that battle, meaning averaging one man an hour. We ended up eventually leaving Mogadishu, Somalia, and it was kind of seemed also as like, I'd have to say maybe in some opinions, a failed mission or failed objective. And Aidid eventually was taken out. It was many years later that we found out he was allies with bin Laden. And we had already been hunting bin Laden, or at least he'd been on our radar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
it. He was on our radar, but he wasn't considered a big deal yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't consider it a big deal yet.
No. But that's the story. Today we refer to that as Black Hawk Down because they were two Black Hawk helicopters that got shot down. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that summary.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was I felt like I served with those guys. I mean, I didn't know any of them. We were never on the same base. I might have given a couple of the helicopter pilots weather brief at some point or another. I have no way of knowing how true that is.
Yeah.
But they were, we wore the same uniform. It was the same era. I have watched that movie a couple of times,
Hmm.
but I bought a
I
copy of it and it stayed on my shelf for 10 years before I played it. Yeah, I had to prepare myself mentally. So
I can
yeah,
imagine.
yeah,
I
I did an awful lot of
actually.
that kind of stuff. And there's 18 more Gold Star families.
Mhm. Yes.
And those families don't give a crap who's president. They don't give a crap that and then I'm also a little bit embarrassed because this is where Elon Omar came from, and now she's representing some district in my state
Hmm.
because she's a Somalian immigrant
Ah,
that she serves in
yes.
Congress.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, I know who you're I
and
think I
and
know who
she
you're referring to.
somehow went from a net worth of $30,000 to $30 million in a year, and it turned out just last week she lost it all. Don't know where it
Mm.
went. But
I don't think we
I don't
wanna
I
know
don't
where.
know how that stuff works, but yeah, I think I got Black Hawk Down right over there. Is on that messy shelf. But just these are 18 families that don't care about any of that stuff. The only thing they care about is the fact that they're missing one.
Mhm.
And this is one of the biggest problems that our commander in chief always has is, well, at least as far as I know, um, they don't seem to be able to understand that it's the individual family is the most important thing in our great collective that we call the United States of America.
Mhm.
This is the greatest place to live, but we need to figure out a way to get kind of back to that. And I think that one of the things that we need to do is take all these Gen Zers and make sure that they're not allowed to graduate high school until they have made a trip to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. And they need to be able to know exactly where Arlington National Cemetery came from
Mhm.
and how it became to be. And they need to know things like John Kennedy, when he was standing on the porch at Arlington, said, "This place is so beautiful, I could stay here forever." And
Mhm.
now, of course, he is there forever.
Correct.
Um, and they
I
need to.
myself, and this is a little embarrassing to say since we're talking about Gold Star families and remembrance in Arlington, I have never been to Arlington National Cemetery. Uh,
Go.
I want to
You know
go
what?
very, very
Arlington
badly.
is a game changer. Right outside the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, they have a like a band shell arena kind of thing where a lot of people go make speech. A lot of vice presidents go there and make speeches on Memorial
Mhm.
Day, and
Yeah.
sometimes the president goes there and makes a speech on Memorial Day. And but right across that, there's a little road there, and you go across the road, and you get the most decorated soldier from World War II who
Mm.
became a movie star, whose name I should know his name, but I can't remember his name. But he's buried right there. And he had, by his own request, he would take a grave at Arlington, but it's nothing special. It's just you can't tell that you got to just kind of read all the names. Oh, that's him. Yeah, yeah. He was a movie star. Um,
James Stewart,
no, no, no.
not Jimmy
James, I,
Stewart.
I don't know if James Stewart is at Arlington or not. I know he qualifies to be at Arlington. I believe he qualifies to be at Arlington. If you, I don't have a computer I can Google it on, but if you want to Google most decorated World War II, you'll get his name.
Mm. Okay,
Uh,
on the to-do list.
yeah, we'll put that on the to-do list. Next time I do an interview with you, I'll look it up before we start. Okay. But we talked about post-traumatic stress. We talked about a lot of loss of life and a lot of different conflicts.
Mhm.
But again, to me, the important stuff is the Gold Star Ride Foundation, and the Gold Star families. The foundation, well, that's kind of cool. That's how we get the work done. We have to have some sort of organization that allows us to do what we do. And we give somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 cents out of every donation that comes to us. We are a 501c3 charity.
Mhm.
About 85 cents out of every dollar that's donated to us is given back to the Gold Star families in some form or another. We've purchased groceries, we bought utility bills, we paid for cars, we did PCA service for a guy in Maryland. we've done all sorts of stuff for all sorts of people. And our rule of thumb is that we will do for the family whatever the fallen hero would have done.
Mhm.
So that's where money goes when it's donated to us. But I did all I have one more story that I wanted to tell you, and it goes back to a day when I was riding motorcycle, which I ride a lot. I think I've ridden over 160,000 miles in 7.5 years. Maybe you want to see the man. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, I was doing this ride and I stopped in a cheesy, I call them roach motels,
Mhm.
because they're, I find the cheesiest, ugliest, nastiest place that has running water where I can sleep. That's what I sleep in. And I was checking my email one night. I'm in the middle of the ride, so I have many, many days. As a matter of fact, on this particular ride, I rode for 56 days without going home,
Wow.
um, which is, 2 solid months or 8 solid weeks. Anyway, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle of it, and I get this email that says, "You need to come and meet my best friend. She's a Gold Star mom." And then okay, sounds good. And this was a few years ago, 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Um, we didn't do any vetting then. We do more to do vetting today because believe it or not, we've had a couple of people pretend to be Gold Star families when they weren't Gold Star families. So we do a little vetting now. Anyway, back then we didn't, and I just said, what, set it up, and it'll take me 2 days to get there, but I'll ride that way, and then we'll see you in 2 days. So I get there, and 2 days later, and we meet for lunch, and it's a wonderful lunch. And halfway through lunch, she just stops chewing. She looks at me and she says, "I just don't understand why my son would take his own life." And I said, "He didn't take his own life. That was a sniper's bullet from 7,000 miles away." And she burst into tears, and there was quite a crowd there. I think we had 15, 18 people there, something like that. Everybody at the table was crying. Um, anyway, we kind of continued and went on and did our thing, and 3 hours went by, and we're giving our hugs goodbye, and we're doing all that stuff. Sorry, I was just reminded of something kind of funny. But anyway, I swing my leg over the motorcycle, and down the road I go. See more Gold Star families, go to put on more miles, more states, more miles, more families. And 7 days later, I check into the Roach Motel, a few thousand miles down the road. I check into the Roach Motel and I get an email from that same woman who said, "You have to meet my best friend. She's a Gold Star mom." And she simply says, "Your visit here was the greatest thing could have ever happened." Because later that day, she went home and tore up her own suicide note.
Wow. That's called healing, and like the song by Elton John, "Someone Saved My Life Today."
Um, she and I are still friends. I just talked to her 2 days ago. It's
Impressive.
not uncommon for us to talk on Memorial Day weekend. Uh, I stay in communication with most of the Gold Star families in some fashion or another. Um, once a year, I'll just say, "I remember you," or thinking about you, or whatever it needs to be said that day. So I'm in contact with most of them,
Mhm.
and they are. I tell you what, the Gold Star families are ready to come out of the woodwork. When I hit a deer at 70 miles an hour on a motorcycle,
Damn.
I know you're thinking, okay, you're not supposed to be alive after that. Well, I know that. And
Mhm.
I know that I'm on borrowed time, and I know that I have a lot of angels watching over me. I hit that deer, and I called a friend of mine, an Air Force veteran in Indiana. He goes by the road name Head Dog. My road name is Token Squid. His road name is Head Dog. I
Mhm.
called up Head Dog, and I said, "Yeah, I hit a deer." He says, "You hit a deer at 70?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "And lived?" I said, "Yeah." Then he pauses for a long time, and he says, "How many Gold Star families have you met with now?" I said, "This was a couple years ago, sir. About 350." He says, "I guess you got about 350 guardian angels, don't you?" I said, "Yes, I do. I have at least 350 guardian angels." I think the number's closer to 560 today. But I can tell you story after story, and I don't know how much time we got, but I can tell you story after story after story of the guardian angels that reached down to take care of me.
Mm.
Um, riding a motorcycle is all by itself. As soon as you swing I often say that my superpower is invisibility, and I turn it on whenever I swing my leg over the seat.
Mm.
Um, it is inherently dangerous enough just by putting your leg over the seat and grabbing handlebars. But you start doing things like crisscrossing the country and riding 8, 10, 12 hours a day nonstop for days and days and weeks. And it just the danger kind of multiplies exponentially. And then you get all of the other stuff that comes along with it. Like motorcycles will break down, just like your car will break down. But if your car breaks down, you kind of coast to the side of the road and it's no big deal. Motorcycle breaks down and you're wondering what the hell are you going to do next.
Yeah.
I remember I was northbound in Alabama. I just left Dothan. Dothan is a wonderful little town in southeastern part of Alabama. And I was about an hour north of Dothan, and I had been riding in the rain. I'd met the Gold Star family in Dothan, and we waited for the tornado to pass. When the tornado passed, I started riding, and I'm in the rain for an hour and a half, just pouring rain. And down the road I go, and I get to the next town. There's a stoplight. There's 2 lanes of highway going each way, and there's a left turn lane and a right turn lane and a stoplight. The same thing going the other way. I'm in the left lane going straight, and there's 2 cars in front of me. The light is red, and it's up a hill. So I'm going up a hill, stopped in the rain on a motorcycle in the left lane. And the light turns green, and I let out the clutch to go, and the motorcycle dies. Blah.
Damn.
And I immediately pull in the clutch, and I hit the button to start it again, and the starter goes, Yeek. And I'm screwed. I'm going uphill in the rain. What am I going to do? My only thought was, how the hell do I get out of this situation? My motorcycle weighs 1,000 pounds. When it's fully loaded, I mean, I got the full windjammer, I got the full trunk, I got the hard saddlebags, and it's loaded down, and I got a backpack sitting in the seat right behind me. I'm 1,000 pounds, right? Now I'm 1,000 pounds with a broken back and a bad headache and a right knee that doesn't work. And I'm going up a hill in the rain, and what the hell am I going to do? And I hit my 4-ways right away, so everybody knew I was in trouble, sort of. And I start with both legs, I'm pushing that thing, trying to get it off to the right. And as soon as I get to the center lane, I look over my right shoulder to see what's going on back there. And there's a semi blocking. He has manipulated his truck to block all the lanes of traffic so I can get across the road. The angels come out of nowhere. And then that story gets really great. I don't know how much you want me to tell you the whole. Do I got 8 more minutes to tell the rest of that story? Because it was one miracle after another for the next 12 hours. One miracle after another. People taking care of me, and strangers. People. I mean, I never met the guy in that semi. Do you think that he has no idea that I'm still talking about him? That was, I don't know, what, 3-4 years ago. He has no idea that I'm still talking about him. But I love that guy. I have no idea who he is. But I love that guy. He didn't stop for an autograph or nothing. He just made sure I got safe, and then he took off down the road. And that was just one of 4 miraculous angels that came out of nowhere. There was a guy in a truck. I get to the side of the road. This guy in a 4-wheel drive pickup truck. It's still raining, right? He comes and he pulls up. There's on the right side of the road, there was a sidewalk about 10 feet off the road, and there's grass growing in the boulevard between the road. He pulls his truck into the grass right up there, and he rolls down the passenger window. Hey, you need a hand?
That
yeah, if you got one, that's awesome.
That's luck. That's fortune. That's the angel.
He leaves his truck there, and he pushes me, and we go up around the corner, and there's a parking lot up there, like, I don't know, maybe 100 feet. So we push it 100 feet into this parking lot. And he says, He says, what are you going to do? What's wrong? I said, I got no idea what's wrong. I need to find somebody to help me fix my motorcycle. He says, I got 2 buddies that just opened a repair shop down the road. You want me to call them? Yes, I want you to call.
Pure luck.
So, pure luck. Guy stopped in it illegally parked and then helps me push it. And he says, he gets the guys on the phone. And he says, they'll be here any second. And I said, at that moment, I said, all right, well, I'm going to tell people what's going on because I'm riding around the country. I got to do my 30-second YouTube video thing, Instagram video, whatever. And I say, yep, me and the bike are sick. We're in this town. I don't even remember what town it was. We're in this town. And I hit post. So that took a minute and a half. I hit post. I turn around. There's a guy standing there. And he says, yeah, my buddy just called me. Your motorcycle broke. We got a repair shop down the road. That really so close we could probably push it there. And he brings some diagnostic tools and he's doing this and it's still raining. And we're working in the rain. He's plugging this tool in over here and this gauge over here. And he says, yep, pretty sure your starter shot. That starter doesn't work anymore. And I said, okay, crap. What are we going to do next? And he says, well, you got 2 choices. There's a Harley-Davidson dealership that'll fix it up the road that way, or there's a Harley-Davidson dealership that'll fix it down the road that way. I said, you guys can't fix it in your shop? He said, no, we don't have the parts. And we don't have quite enough tools you got to pull that thing apart. A lot has to come off to get it at the starter. He says, we don't have quite enough tools, but we got a trailer. So we'll take you wherever you want to go. They said, oh, okay. So I call up the dealer. I said, I'm northbound. So I call up that dealership and he says, we don't have the parts. We can't fix it for a week. So I call the dealership that's back in Dothan. Remember this story started in Dothan. I call up that dealership. He says, yeah, we got a starter here. We'll get it put on for you. I said, all right, we'll see what happens. They close. He says, we close at 6. We got there at 5 to 6 and he put it in and said, we'll get at it first thing in the morning. I check into a hotel, but to get there, the guy that was there testing everything calls his buddy. Buddy shows up with a truck and a trailer. We put the thing in there, and I'm riding in the backseat of this pickup truck. We're going down the road an hour and a half, right? We got to go an hour and a half down the road to get to Dothan. And I said, well, you guys can't do this for free. I got to give you something. And he says, no. You're a veteran, first of all. And he points to a sticker, and he says, the owner of this truck is a retired general. We're all members of the American Legion. I myself am former Marine, and this guy over here is in the National Guard right now. You're not giving us a penny.
Wow.
I hadn't even told him what the Gold Star Ride Foundation does yet. I was just a veteran with a broken motorcycle. And he said, you're not giving us anything. Anyway, we get it there. They give me a ride to the hotel. We snap a couple pictures for you. I signed some books for him. Remember, there's a book. Yours very sincerely and respectfully is a book, tells a lot of stories. This story's not in there, but there's a lot of stories of the road that are in there. Anyway, next morning, I'm carrying all my gear, right? So, and it's all wet because I've been riding in the rain. So chaps on one shoulder, leather jacket on the other. Now I'm in Dothan, the sun is shining, and it's 90 degrees. And I'm carrying all this wet gear, and I got to walk about a block to, and I got my overnight bag and my laptop computer. So I'm like loaded down. I walk about a block to the dealership, and I walk into the service area, and he says, oh yeah, we're done with your bike. We'll be wheeling it out here, and I got the paperwork for you and all that stuff. We'll be ready. We'll have you gone in 10 minutes. You're all done. New starter. I said, hey, can I talk to the general manager? And he says, sure. And he introduces me, go through the sales department. I'm talking to the general manager, who happens to be the owner of the dealership. I tell him all about what work I'm doing, hoping that he's going to play fast and loose with the bill. Anyway, I'm in there talking to him, and I'm sharing the story with him for like 2 minutes. And an old guy sticks his head in around the corner because we're in the office, right? We're not standing in the dealership. We're in the office talking privately. And this old guy sticks his head in, and he says, hey, and the dealership has only been open for 10 minutes. It's early in the morning, right? Guy sticks his head in the corner, and he says, hey, somebody was here looking for somebody traveling around the country on a motorcycle. Was that you? I said, how would I possibly know? I don't have any idea. He says, well, come on. He's sitting over here. So me and the owner walk out of the office. We go over there, and we're introduced to this guy who is a 35-year-old person, guy. And he says, yeah, my name is Ricardo. I saw your post that your motorcycle was broke. I'm here to pay for it. Where did you come from?
Whoa.
He said, I rode that Harley Davidson 883 Sportster from St. Cloud, Florida. 6 hours away
Damn.
on an 883 Sportster, and he's there at 10 o'clock in the morning. He started riding at 3:30 in the morning to get there just to pay for my repairs.
Wow.
And the owner of the dealership is going, that's what the owner of the dealership said. Wow. You guys never met? No, I don't know this guy from Adam. I know him now. We're friends now. You can bet. As a matter of fact, his name is Ricardo. I just sent him a message. I think I texted him last week, a couple days ago. Anyway, the owner walks away. He says, I'll be right back. You guys sit and visit for a while. So we're sitting and he tells me all the story of where he came from and all this stuff. We get to know each other. The owner comes back and he says, yeah, I got a pretty good discount for you on them parts back there, Joe. So we're taking pretty good care of you. So have a great day. And I said, well, I got to get going. I'm a day late for my next Gold Star ride or my next Gold Star family I've got to meet. So he walks over there with me and he won't hear of me having anything to do with the payment. He's a Navy veteran, and it turns out he's working as a civilian in the encryption world. Isn't that something that you were doing?
I worked in the civilian sector. What I did actually was I worked with naval recruiting here in Boston, but I started writing. I think I was around like second year there. Being a bit more involved in regards to the work to try and recruit young men and women to join the United States Navy, primarily the hospital corps. Go to OCS, Officer Candidate School. I started like writing like little reports and stuff as to where would be the best universities and schools to go to, where we would have some luck, some prosperity and stuff. But I also started using that skill to my advantage whenever it would come to certain military conflicts that were possibly going on, especially when the war between Russia and Ukraine started. And that got me a lot of attention. And I started doing that just kind of quite often. And I'd hand some of it over to my superiors, to my chief. I ended up handing it over to my he's now a lieutenant commander, and this is a guy who is a Ivy League grad from Princeton. I completely outsmarted him. He was like blown away by this guy's got state college education, no service background, and he just was able to like give me the blueprints as to how to possibly end a war. Like, whoa. That was an ego boost. That was a heck of an ego boost. I'll tell you that. I hadn't felt that before.
So this guy was in a similar thing. You know, he took his DD 214 out of the Navy, but he was doing something different. He was actually working with decoding encrypted messages.
That's challenging. That's really challenging.
Yeah. So but they gave him a pretty good salary for it. And he said, look, they give me a pretty good salary for what I do. And I love the work that you're doing. So you're I'm fixing your motorcycle for you. And then we went and had a cup of coffee. We spent some time together. But then I get on the motorcycle and down the road I go, and I get to go down that exact same highway for 90 miles. Only this time the sun is shining and it's a beautiful ride. But this is just, I probably have a story like that from almost every state in the lower 48. Almost every state's got one.
Yeah.
I've done the miraculous things that I get to experience. But you know, I tell these stories and they're wonderful, wonderful stories, and they make me feel good, and they help me make sure that I think that I'm on the right mission, you know, but every now and then I will bump into a Gold Star family for a second time, or we'll talk to each other through texting or email or something. And they'll remind me that how I made them feel is that's really where I need to try to keep my focus. And I do that for the future stuff. I don't think about it for the past stuff. I just think, well, that's a great friend of mine. I can't wait to have a cigar and a glass of scotch with that person again.
Mhm.
Or I can't wait to, we'll sit down and we'll have a steak dinner together again. And they are, you asked the question, which service or what era was the most popular, but I've had them from every era you can imagine. I think the newest Gold Star family I've ever met became Gold Stars in 2023.
Mm.
The oldest Gold Star family that I came across became Gold Star families in 1952.
Ah, so Korea.
Um, yeah, so Korea. Um, I have met a handful of World War II veterans,
Mm.
but not officially Gold Star families from World War II. But we also play a little fast and loose with that because
Mhm.
we got to get back to the notion that it's not about all of the military. It's about the family that they came from. It's about the individual family for us, for the Gold Star
Yes.
Ride Foundation. So we just kind of approach it at that level. Um, so yeah, we play fast and loose with the rules. Our rules are we have two to be a Gold Star family for the Gold Star Ride Foundation, and the DoD sees it differently. But for us, there has to be two things have to occur. Did
Mhm.
they put on a uniform?
Yep.
Was there a funeral? That's it. How they got from one to the other is less important for us. And I'll tell you why. When I was in the Navy, I was in the Navy from 1987 to 1991.
Mhm.
And when I was in the Navy, one of the guys I served with when I got to my duty station was somebody who was drafted and fought for the Army in Vietnam. And after he did his bit for God and country in the Army, and then he transferred to the Navy and became enlisted in the Navy. And he rose to the rank of first class petty officer. For those of you playing along at home that don't know what that means, this one is a second class petty officer. I made it to E5.
Mm.
E means enlisted, 5 means there's 4 ranks below me. Um, so he made it, he rose to the rank of E6, which is, you got to be an E5 for 3 years before they let you try to be an E6.
Wow.
So, and the base that we were stationed at, the unit that we were stationed with, changed uniforms from winter blues to summer whites and from summer whites to winter blues every 6 months.
Mhm.
So in the summer, if you wore your dress uniform or your working class uniform, it was white for me. Because this was also 30 something years ago, 36, 30. I got my DD 214 35 years ago this year. So I've been out for 35 years. So the uniform has changed significantly.
Yes.
Anyway, um, this guy, when we switched our uniforms,
Mhm.
everybody had to come to the payday meeting in their Class A dress uniform. For the enlisteds, that meant your Cracker Jacks. Cracker Jacks, a little white Dixie cup, neckerchief scarf, 13 button pants. I don't even know they have those anymore. Um,
The one that
but
I hear people miss the most is the Johnny Cash uniform.
I don't even know what the Johnny Cash uniform is because
Something that I think
I'm
that
thinking it's the Man in Black. So,
yes, yeah, it's something maybe it's a bit more newer, more my
well,
generation,
that
like
would
millennials and stuff.
from the enlisted when I was in the only you had to be an E7 or above or an officer. Then you would get a Johnny Cash uniform because then you put on a suit and tie, basically, and the suit was always black. Um, but and they didn't have to change uniforms from summer to winter. We had to change uniforms from summer to winter. Anyway, the point of the story is he came in when I got there and I met him. I met him as a second class.
Mhm.
I was a slick sleever. I only had one stripe, and a dress uniform had nothing. No, I had one hash mark, one diagonal hash mark. And then when I got promoted to E2, I got 2 hash marks. I got promoted to E3, I had 3 hash marks. And when I finally made it to E4, then I got the crow. put the crow with one chevron underneath it. Anyway, I didn't put on E4 for 2 years. So when I met him, he was an E5, which meant that he had been an E6, and he popped a positive for urinalysis. And they busted him down a rank, made him pay a fine, various different things. But this is a guy who started out killing people in Vietnam. Okay. This was his job. He was protecting his brothers and sisters in the country by taking care of things in Vietnam. He was following orders. He was doing his duty, probably had post-traumatic stress into a wicked amount. I never did get him to tell me any Vietnam stories, but we did have to show up in his class A's. When you show up in your class A's, and our unit had to have everybody showed up for a payday meeting every payday, 1st and the 15th at 7:00 in the morning. Everybody was in the office. Payday meeting, blah, blah, blah. Everybody goes home and does their thing. So twice a year, we have to switch uniforms. First time I see him in his class A's, he is a second-class petty officer. Because he's already been busted down a rank. And when you're in your class A's, that means the medals are on your left side and your ribbons are on your right side. And you wearing them all. Full medals, none of this. See, these are all medals, but I get to wear the ribbons, right? Because it's not a dress uniform. You're in a dress uniform, all the medals are medals, and all the ribbons are ribbons, and they're different awards, whatever. He showed up in his class A's. He was covered from here to here with medals.
Wow.
He was covered. And that's
a collection. That's quite a collection.
He was covered in those medals. And every payday, we had to have a payday meeting. And at the end of the payday meeting, for every single payday, they threw a deck of cards out on the table and everybody had to draw one. And the high and the low had to go pee in a cup for urinalysis, because this was under Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan instituted a zero tolerance policy for illegal drug use of any kind. This included smoking marijuana, which is now legal almost everywhere. Still not legal in the military, I don't think, but it's legal in most states. It's legal in Minnesota for casual adult use, whatever they want to call it. It's legal in most states. I chose not to. My reasons for not smoking marijuana are my own, and they go back to 1982, which was 5 years before I even joined the Navy. But anyway,
I haven't tried marijuana since like 2017, and that was when I had an edible in college. I didn't even get high.
Well, I served with this guy for about another year. So I'm in the Navy for 2 years. He's in the Navy for 18 years. And he drew a high and low, or high or a low, and he popped another positive. 2 strikes and you're out. According to the commander in chief, 2 strikes and you're out. They busted him down to an E4. They fined him a month's pay. And they gave him an other than honorable discharge from the military.
That happened to my uncle on my mother's side. He had one of those discharges. What for? I don't really know, and quite honestly, I don't care.
So my belief and opinion is, well, first of all, I really wish that I still had contact with him, because what he offered, that's the kind of sacrifice. Okay, you need to have a special rule for somebody who spends 18 years, and the first 2 years were fighting a war where people shooting at him. It's not like he just did administrative work. I mean, this guy was in the thick of it. And then they give him an other than honorable after 18 years of honorable service because he had the audacity to smoke a joint. You know what? I'm sorry. I just disagree with that entire thing. Anyway, it is because stuff like that exists and happens in our military. And we just had another recent run of it because Biden told everybody they had to get the COVID shot or get kicked out. I met a guy 2 weeks ago who says, I chose not to get the shot. they medically or they I didn't remember what kind of discharge they said he had, but they forced him out of the military because he refused to get a COVID shot, which is now proven to, and then let's not go there.
Yeah.
I will say that
we lived through COVID. We don't want to live through the horrors of it and the repercussions and just how much it messed with people's personalities and social life, etc. Trust me.
I will say this about the COVID vaccine. I did not get one. I did not get any of the boosters. That needle has never come anywhere near me. And every Tuesday night, I go to grief share with my wife because we buried her father 6 months ago, and we buried my father 2.5 years ago. And I think I mentioned we buried one of my older sisters last August, and we buried one of my younger brothers who died on the 4th of July, taking a nap at 3:00 in the afternoon on the 4th of July. But anyway, so we have more than our fair share of grief. So we go to a grief share meeting every Tuesday night, and there's a guy sitting in there that I've now come to know rather well. He lost his wife last September to brain cancer, to a very rare form of very fast acting brain cancer. She got cancer and she was dead in 4 months. And he says she got the COVID shot and she got 3 boosters. And I'm pretty sure it was the COVID shot and the boosters that gave her the brain cancer. That's his opinion. And everybody can have them. You know what? All I'm saying is eating fresh fruit that's organic tastes pretty good. So I'm going to keep on doing that. So, and listen, it says very clearly in the Bible, if you're any sort of a Christian at all, it says very clearly in the Bible, we know not the day nor the hour, and it will come like a thief in the night. So when I'm supposed to go, I will go. And if it's supposed to be from COVID, it will be from COVID. I'll deal with that on the day that it comes. That's another one of them things. Guess what? Everybody gets to have that journey also. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to worry about doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to worry about taking care of the next Gold Star family that's in front of me. And that's actually in front of me Friday.
I actually have a question about Gold
3
Star.
days, I'll be visiting Gold Star families on the West Coast.
Yeah. I have a question. Yes. And I had asked this question to my lieutenant commander, and he gave me kind of an abbreviated answer of it. How do you handle it if it's like a Gold Star wife in the instance of she lost her husband in combat when she was like pregnant? What's the approach to that per se? I know that's a touchy one, but I'm just a little curious.
It's not. I'll tell you the true story. The true story is the woman was pregnant. Actually, she was on the East Coast. So she's in your neck of the woods. I think she was in Pennsylvania, just north of Philly. Scranton, that area. That I
familiar with that area. I'm very familiar with that area with Scranton.
In fact, if we look at this book, her story is not in this book, but I wanted her. That's actually the father of her child's gravesite right inside the book. I don't get to say that very often. I don't get to tell the story of that very often. But anyway, they were not married, but he was doing his 1-year tour in Iraq.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he was in Iraq. And so she was pregnant while he was over there. And when he came home, the wedding was all set up. First thing they're going to do is get married as soon as he's back. He had the baby while he was over there. But their story is that every week, every Friday, we'll say, every Friday she would take kite string and measure her belly and cut the kite string to the size of her belly while she was pregnant. And she would mail that kite string to him in Iraq.
Wow.
And he was over there for 51 weeks. And then he packed up all his gear and he sent it back home. And the unit commander came in and said, we got to go do one more tour. We got to, they were just routine go out, check it out, make sure everything's okay, get back, kind of things that they were dealing with. And he said, I mailed all my gear back. I thought we were all done with this. I mailed all my gear back. I sent it all back home. And the unit skipper said, borrow some, you're going. So he borrowed some gear and jumped in a truck, ran over an IED, and that was the end of him. His parents were the official next of kin. His fiance was not. And that's when things got really hairy back here. I mean, she became one of our Gold Star moms, no question.
Yes. Oh, of
And
course.
when I met them,
Hmm.
the unborn baby, while he was doing his tour in Iraq, that kid's now a 12-year-old boy when I met him. So I mean, we had a great deal of. This isn't a real direct answer to your question,
Of
but
course.
he's a Gold Star son. That's not a question.
Yes.
But his parents, because they
Mhm.
were the next of kin,
Yep.
the official next of kin, decided to disown their grandchild and their potential daughter-in-law. So it got really uglier than necessary. Their whole family situation, their whole family dynamic, because the little boy who was unborn and a complete total innocent with all of this, now he doesn't have grandparents on that side of the family. And also the military said they're the next of kin. They get the life insurance policy. They get everything. And they said, you don't get anything. You're on your own. Now, granted, there's a blood trail. There's a DNA trail,
Yes, of
right?
course.
So when he graduates high school and chooses to go to college, the Veterans Administration will pay for his college because
Okay.
there's no question who his dad is and how his dad was killed. So
Yes.
the VA will take care of that. But there's an awful lot that has to happen in between.
Yes.
So we did our best. Our thing is they have to carry that forever, right?
Correct.
That boy has to grow up without a father pretty much no matter what.
Yes.
Pretty much no matter what. Um, and I don't know if his mother remarried. She was not remarried when I met her, but
Mm.
so he is somebody whose dad was killed in Iraq, and she is a Gold Star widow, whether she gets that name or not. She's another one of those examples, like the guy I served with, who
Yes.
got an other than honorable after 18 years of honorable service.
Yes.
She gets the same treatment because
Mhm.
they never tied the knot. So she doesn't get to be called a Gold Star widow officially because they never got married.
Yep.
But is she? I mean, do you think
Absolutely.
she is? Well, I think
Absolutely.
she is. You don't have to really, particularly if you disagree with me, you don't have to answer that question.
Yeah.
But that's why we get to play fast and loose with the rules. But the truest answer to your question is we're there to help them carry the load, and we're there to do whatever the fallen hero would have done.
Mm.
The rest of it is inconsequential, really. It's funny. We're talking about Gold Star widows at this juncture, and at this point in the conversation, we're talking about Gold Star widows. Statistically, in the United States, there are currently somewhere in the neighborhood of 179,000 Gold Star widows.
Damn, that's a hefty number.
Just widows. That doesn't mean sons, daughters. That doesn't mean brothers and sisters. That doesn't mean moms and dads. That's just widows. And most of these widows, believe it or not, are doing their best to be single parents raising their kids.
Mm.
Be at somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,600 a month. So what are we doing? Guess what we're doing? And we actually had the first fatalities from the war in Iran.
Mm.
One of them was a woman who, her and her family just live 4 miles from me. White
Yes,
Bear,
I knew it was. I knew it was a woman. I knew it was a woman who
the woman
passed.
from
Yeah.
White Bear Lake, Minnesota. White Bear Lake is 4 miles from where I'm sitting right now. She had kids in high school, and now her husband is a Gold Star widow. Well, officially he's a Gold Star widower,
Yep.
but um, but he's a Gold Star widow. A widow is a widow. The
Yes.
fact that he happens to be male doesn't
Doesn't make any
remove anything.
difference.
It
Loss is
doesn't
what it is. Loss is loss.
exactly. Loss is loss, and he is a Gold Star widow with kids in high school that he's now gets to raise by himself.
Hmm.
The interesting side note to that is she was over there. She was in the Middle East for a long time. She was actually on her way home.
Wow.
I think it was it was less than a month. She was due to come home in less than a month.
So sounds like it was her last rodeo then.
Well, it kind of worked out that way. We don't. So his is again. We got to get it down to the individual family. That's what's important for us.
Hmm.
That's what's important for the Gold Star Ride Foundation. That's what's important for the mission that we are on. Um, and like I said, we're now every family that uh, asks for anything, we meet them in person. I hadn't said that yet in this conversation. So we go meet them in person, and we
Well,
go.
that's the way it's supposed to be. They're going to really feel that level of support, comfort, and inner strength.
Exactly.
They hear it from the voice, face to face, not
Exactly.
video chat, not over the cell phone. That
Well, most charity organizations aren't even doing that. They're just writing a letter.
yeah, that's pathetic.
They might write them a letter and they might say, "Hey, you know what? Here's a one that's started out in your neck of the woods. They like to buy houses for Gold Star families, and we'll let them. That's great. They're doing that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Especially since the housing market sucks right now.
well, the housing market's always going to suck. That it always
Yeah.
has and it always will. I remember when the first house I tried to buy, the going interest rate was 19%. You think you got it bad now? I remember applying for a loan at a 19% interest rate. Anyway, so the housing market's always that. Yeah, you young people, you think you invented stuff. You didn't invent nothing. It's all being repeated. It's all history repeating itself. Um,
Absolutely.
you got me going on the housing market, and I forgot where I was going with my conversation.
Well, speaking of storytelling, for all you media junkies out there, all you vets, all you service members, if you want to please like and subscribe to my podcast. If you want to listen in, you can check me out on Instagram at ATK Media or on YouTube at Chatterbox-94. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. You can DM me via Instagram. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Amazon Music. Wherever the fuck it is that you get your podcast from, you can hear me out. For all you vets and service members out there who have a story to tell, want to open up and let your voice be heard, try and rekindle a level of patriotism that this country very much needs, feel free to let me know. And I am here to listen. I am here to let my listeners. This is not about oh, it was bad. Oh, it was terrible. No. Me with Vets Talk Tough, it is about remembering. It is about storytelling. It is about understanding. It is about taking the time to soak in everything that somebody went through, the sacrifice they made, the toll it took on their life, the toll it took on their family's life, and everything that comes with this strange, complex package deal. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a very complex package deal.
I like that.
Yes, yeah. I have one final question for you before I tune out. It seems that a lot of the service members that you've been doing this with, especially since they're kind of what's left is Vietnam and having grown up during the Vietnam War era.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that America's involvement in Vietnam and Southeast Asia was worth the price that was paid?
Was worth the price that it was paid? Well, that's a simple question that deserves a complex answer. because to answer the question on its face value, because it's a yes or no question.
Yes.
But for
Yeah.
me to give you either a yes or no
Mm-hmm.
kind of requires me to step back a little bit and say, hold on a second. If the answer is no, why did we go? And that is something that is necessary to approach also.
Mm-hmm.
Was it worth the price that we paid? Well, in my opinion, I'm somebody who likes to read history for the fun of it.
As am
So
I.
so I have read a lot about the history of it. I think that Harry Truman was a great president to help us get through World War II. I think he was a relatively good president overall, but I also think he was a human being. And human beings make mistakes. His biggest mistake was at the end of World War II,
Mm-hmm.
where we had, let's put all of this into context. France had just been overrun by Germany, right? And the
Yes.
first thing that we did in World War II is get Germany out of France. Well, first we helped keep them out of England, and then we drove them out of France, and we drove them out of Africa, and we drove them out of Italy. But the big thing was that we drove the Germans out of France. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of the conversation. So right after we drive the Germans out of France, comes this Asian fella who approaches Harry Truman and he says, look, we want our own country, and here's our constitution. He had drafted a constitution for Vietnam, which was almost a mirror copy of the United States Constitution.
I
Almost.
take it this gentleman was named Ho Chi Minh.
His name was Ho Chi Minh. And Ho Chi Minh asked Truman for the United States to recognize Vietnam as its own independent nation with this new constitution. The problem was Vietnam was a French colony. And if you ever go into a Vietnamese restaurant today, you'll find that it tastes remarkably similar to French food. And that's the reason for it was they got most of their recipes from France.
Well, I've never
French
had
people
French
lived in
food,
Vietnam.
but I have had a lot of Vietnamese food, and I love Vietnamese food. My wife and
Yeah,
I,
it's
it's delicious.
for the most part, it very much is. Well, the Vietnamese people, Ho Chi Minh rose to power, if I can use that kind of a phraseology, in the 30s, same time Hitler did. So he became some person of prominence in Vietnam in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time the World War II came around and Germany invaded France, Vietnam kind of thought, well, we're not really a colony anymore. But Truman reached out to, I don't remember who was it that was running France at the time. I believe the Paris airport bears his name, but so Truman reached out to France and said, hey, they want to be independent, and France said, "Nah, we kind of like keeping that country. We want to keep them, so let's keep them as a colony as a French colony instead of allowing them to be an independent nation."
Yeah.
So Truman said to Ho Chi Minh, sorry, we're going to support the French. French say they want to keep you as a colony. Ho Chi Minh then says, fuck you, we're going to war. So he goes to war against France. So it was Vietnam against France. And the United States had a very, very limited role. I think the first American who died in Vietnam was actually in 1948, and he was only one of about 15 Americans that were there in an advisory capacity trying to tell the French army how to win a war.
Because once again, for all of those of you who have been living under a rock for half your life, it was not originally Vietnam that this conflict. We referred to it as Indochina, which was pretty much the entire peak of East Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, etc. And they were all French territories, all French colonies. It took quite some time before they finally kind of were kicked out of the equation.
Yeah, and Laos doesn't even exist anymore. That's a different conversation for a different day.
Yes.
And Nixon never bombed Laos. But he was not a crook. So anyway, that's as much fun as we get to have with that. Anyway, the short version of what happened next was, I think it wasn't until Eisenhower took office
Mhm.
that the French said, we've had enough of this. But the United States said, we've already put a president in South Vietnam, so we need to support him. So the French backed out and the United States stayed in that conflict. And
Mm.
incidentally, yeah, incidentally, the Vietnamese all refer to it as the American War. Go figure. But we talked about the Vietnamese War, the Vietnam War. We talked about it at length at the beginning of this conversation. And we
Yes.
talked about the win-loss ratio. And we talked about the necessity of the civilian population to support it. So it depends on really what you're calling the cost. To get back
Mhm.
to your original question, what cost are you referring to when you say, was it worth the cost? Was it worth the lesson that we learned that the civilian population has to support the military? Was it worth the cost that we lost 50,427 American lives, not counting the ones we lost to Agent Orange for the that we're still losing today to
Mhm.
Agent Orange because anybody who was in Vietnam got exposed to Agent Orange. Incidentally, as long as I mentioned Agent Orange, there were a number of United States military serving in Puerto Rico in the early to mid 60s, which is where Agent Orange was tested and invented, who were
That
also exposed to Agent Orange. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them that served in Puerto Rico, never saw Vietnam at all, but they still got exposed to Agent Orange and they're still dying from Agent Orange related illnesses and diseases. Or are you talking about what we learned about jungle fighting? Or are
so
you
can
talking about how we prevented communism from spreading, which was what everybody was saying at the time of Vietnam was our reason for being there. So it really kind of depends on which lessons that we learned that you're referring to. Um, I wish, I personally wish that Harry Truman would have just said, "Yeah, we'll recognize you as a country." Um, it would be interesting to see what the world would look like today if that had been the case. But the truth is, you can't change the past.
No. No, not under any
So,
circumstances.
so we can't change the past. Nobody has a flux capacitor. If you think we really have one, listen, folks, that was a fictional movie. Nobody's really got a flux capacitor. I don't care how many DeLoreans you see on the road; they're not time machines. Anyway, that would be nice. But I also think that there are a lot of things that happened because of Vietnam that have made us a better nation. I believe that, when I go see a Gold Star family that
Mhm.
became a Gold Star because of somebody that died in Vietnam, the relationship that I get to develop because of that is greater than any relationship I could have gotten without it. It's greater than any relationship I could have gotten if we would have actually won the war and South Vietnam would have become the whole Vietnam and they would have become an independent nation with free elections, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I think we've proven with Cuba that we can coexist with communist nations.
Absolutely. I fully
But
agree.
if we also need to learn or realize that what we learned with is what we learned with the world countries in general is
Mhm.
that communism generally doesn't work if you want free people. It works great if you want a very large staff.
Mm.
I'll use
My
that
my
language.
wife is from a communist country. My wife is from Venezuela.
Okay.
She could tell you 1,000 something more detailed stories that the people of the United States don't know jack squat about because, well, like I said, the American propaganda machine,
All right.
and
Right.
not really taking time to soak in culture and rich history behind certain countries. The way I've always described communism is that communism works temporarily, and it
Well,
eventually will
even at
catch.
that, it works temporarily with a really high cost. Um,
Yes.
and while I was trying to speak more generally, and when you bring your wife into the story, we got to get specific. Um, what I was kind of trying to say is specifically, you end up with a leader,
Yes.
whatever you want to call him, uh, And the leader is basically the owner of the company, and the company is the entire country, and he makes them work for literally nothing, right? So they become his indentured servants. And this is it. I'm kind of trying to speak generally and universally about, if you put all of the communist countries together, these are their commonalities. So yeah, you can make it work, but the people aren't very happy. You can make it work, but there's a lot of starvation. There's a lot of death. There's a lot of people in prison for things that we take for granted, like free speech.
Yep.
You know, Yakov Smirnoff. Yakov Smirnoff is a wonderful comedian who's a Russian immigrant. I don't know if you've ever heard Yakov or not.
It definitely rings a bell. I feel like I've heard the
You
name.
can follow him on Facebook. Some of his comedy is just really funny because he still speaks with a Russian accent. And not only was he a successful comedian in the United States, primarily in the 80s, but he bought a theater in Branson, Missouri, which is still running. And he still does stand-up shows, but he also put himself to college to become a psychologist. Anyway, Yakov says, we have free speech in America. And in Russia, where I'm from, they told us we had free speech there too. And you do. You do have free speech in Russia. But in America, you have free speech after you say it. You have freedom after you say it. In Russia, after you say it, you're in prison. So anyhow, thank you very much for letting me drop Yakov Smirnoff's name. Funny comedian, but he found a way to tell the important things in a funny manner. And I think that's very, very important for all of us.
Yes,
We really do have to have a reason to laugh. I gave a speech last year at the unveiling of a Woody Williams Gold Star Family Memorial. These are wonderful little monuments that are erected in various cities. I think there's 150 of them around the country right now. They're paid for by private funds, and they are erected to commemorate the families of what it takes to win a war, Gold Star families. And they unveiled one, and they asked me to give the speech to introduce this monument. And at some point, I made a joke, and I heard everybody burst into laughter. And I said, I love hearing that laughter. That laughter is very, very important, because every person I've ever met who put on a uniform did so that, not so that their families could suffer. They did so their families could be better off. And the number one way for me personally to tell that things are better is to hear laughter. So they didn't die for you to be miserable. And I understand you're grieving, and I understand there's a lot of sorrow that goes along with that. But the people who died want you to be able to laugh. They want that. That's part of their mission, was to make sure that you have a life where you can laugh. And this is something that I think, although I've never lived in a communist country, this is something that I think is probably missing from a lot of communist countries. It's very difficult for them to find the ability to laugh. It's not impossible. Viktor Frankl wrote heavily about that when he wrote about Man's Search for Meaning and the time he spent in concentration camps in Germany. Even in the concentration camps, when everybody was literally starving to death, there were people in the camps that found ways to make other people laugh.
That amazes me.
Laughter is very, very important. It's a very, very important part of our world and our life and our existence. So thank you very much for laughing at least one of my jokes.
No problem.
And I think there's even one in the book.
Mm.
I think there's one in the book. So as you know, you gave your little monologue telling everybody to like and subscribe to your stuff.
Yes.
Allow me a little bit of a monologue. goldstarride.org is where you find everything you want to find about the Gold Star Ride Foundation. You can find us at Instagram at Gold Star Ride, where you find countless videos, 30-second to 1-minute videos about what I'm doing, where I'm at on the road, videos of me and Gold Star families. You find the same kind of thing at Facebook and at X and at Tumblr and at, I don't know, are there any more? There must be more. But anyway, they're all over the place. You can find links to all of them at goldstarride.org. You can buy our book at goldstarride.org. You can buy this patch. We love this patch. You haven't laughed yet? You'll laugh at this. It says, my DD214 can kick your MBA's ass.
That's a good one.
We sell them only to veterans, only to veterans on our website, goldstarride.org. You can buy all kinds of neat stuff at our website. You know, we've got some of these electronic eyes. You put them in the windshield of your motorcycle, and they're animated, and they just kind of look around, so it makes it look like your motorcycle's alive. We sell those on our website, and patches and books, and you can learn where we're riding. You can learn about our 250-mile self-directed motorcycle ride anywhere in the country. You got to get it done in 3 days between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and Memorial Day is behind us now. So you got just pick 3 days, pick where you want to ride, register with us on our website, and go do a 250-mile motorcycle ride. Why? Because our country is 250 years old this year. You can sign up at our website to come golfing with us. I'm sure that while a lot of your listeners might be from Boston, not all of them are. So you can come golfing with us. We're having a celebrity golf outing on June 29th, which is going to have a bunch of NFL Hall of Famers, possibly a couple, 2 or 3 baseball Hall of Famers, and some nationally known broadcasters, 1 or 2 movie stars. We're going to just get together with a bunch of celebrities and have a lot of fun. And you can learn about all that stuff. You can learn about it at goldstarride.org. And I love it when you decide that you're going to follow me and like and subscribe to my crap too.
Well, it was great having you on the show. Thank you for your service. Till next time, folks, stay high in life.
Thanks for being an American worth fighting for. Thanks for having me in. Peace.